Welcome back to another week. Let's discuss with Meg Duke, where we talk some things perinatal and all things mental health. This week, I have with me, I'm so excited. Tara Clark is an author, a podcaster, and creator of the Instagram account Modern Mom Probs. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you so much for having me, Meg. I'm really excited to be here.
It is genuinely my pleasure. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this. So, in my show, I always like to start asking people how we know each other, but since I reached out to you, we don't. I DM'd you, and because I've been following you, and I'm really excited to get to know you a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sort of like a parasocial relationship. It's like I feel like I know Tara because she's online.
That's exactly right. It's really interesting how social media has given it's been nice because I feel like there are certain things that are supportive. Like a couple of my podcasts that I listen to, they have people write in and they'll be like, you got me through chemo, you got me through grad school, you got me through. I feel like I was a big, and then also at the same time, it's like, and I literally don't know you.
Yeah, that happens a lot. But what I love the most is I love connecting with people. And then
Mhm.
when I do have the opportunity to meet them in person, it's so special. And it always is like, oh, I felt like I've known you for 20 years. And like you
Mhm.
hug and it all
Yeah.
goes well. And so I love that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just jump in. How did you decide to start Modern Mom Probs?
It's a great question. So, my son was born in 2012, and prior to him being born, I worked at Nickelodeon. I actually worked I worked in social media at Nickelodeon. I was
That is so
Dora the
cool.
Explorer. Thank you. I was Dora the Explorer on Facebook. Although my mom likes to tell people that I was like actually Dora the Explorer. I was like, no, mom, like on Facebook, like I write her posts. Like I'm not
Uh-huh.
actually Dora the Explorer.
Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty cool. It was a good experience. And this was actually like pre-Instagram. This is just like Facebook and Twitter at that point.
Yeah.
And so when he was born, I decided to stay home with him full time. I mean, I tried to go part time, but they were like, it's all or nothing. It's like full time or nothing. And I was like, I'm
Oh
just going to stay home with
gosh.
him. It was a hard decision to make at the time, but I decided to stay home with him, partly because childcare is so outrageously expensive. And so it just didn't really make so much sense
Yes.
financially.
Yes.
So I decided to stay home with him. And when he was about 3, I was looking for a creative outlet. And I was also looking for a way to connect with others. And it just so
Mhm.
happened that there was this new app called Instagram that was like starting to get popular. And there was a website called Canva that really had just come out. And so it was like the perfect like cross of like, I started using Canva to create posts for my new Instagram account. And I remember saying to my friends and family, I'm going to start an Instagram account about parenting. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, 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 it's like going to be a thing. They're like, yeah, no, like Instagram's for taking pictures of your latte or your sandwich. Like that doesn't even make sense. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, 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 it's going to be a thing. Promise. Like, follow me on this one. It's going to be a thing. And so, I started Modern Mom Probs as a creative outlet and a way to connect with other parents.
That is amazing. And it's interesting, not that it matters for the point of our conversation, but I didn't realize Canva was that has been around for that long.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was actually just to give you a timing, I should say, it was 2016. It was February of 2016 when I started my original account. And my original account was called NYC Mom Probs because I was talking about living in New York City and the
Uh-huh.
things that we deal with living in a major city. And so then at the end of 2016, I moved out of the city into the suburbs. And then I had this like crisis of like, well, I don't have New York City mom problems anymore. I
Right.
have modern mom problems. And so I
Yeah.
switched the name of April of 2017. And then it just went off from there. So
Amazing.
back to the Canva thing. Yeah, it was February of 2016. I was using it heavily.
And way to pivot though, right? Because you're absolutely right. Actually, so I used to live, we're going to go on a New York tangent just for a moment, if you don't
Mhm.
mind. Come along with me. I used to live in New York City, and I just remembered thinking, like, unless I marry some billionaire where we can just like park our car in the garage in our brownstone or whatever, I'm like, I don't know how
Mhm.
people push a stroller down the subway and all of that. And so that really is such a unique, like really deep city living. I also was lucky enough to study abroad in London, and I remember seeing like prams over there, and I was like,
Mhm.
how how do you do it? So that is a very necessary Instagram account for people who live in New York or big
Yeah.
city.
That's what it is. It's like you nailed it completely when you said about getting the stroller down the subway. Like that was the kind of stuff I would talk about, right? Like
Yeah.
getting your stroller on the public bus
Yes.
or,
Oh
you know,
gosh.
schools, nursery schools, private schools, public schools, all of those things. It's a very unique experience raising a
Mhm.
child in the city, and I've had the opportunity of doing both. Like so, my son was nearly 4 years old when we moved out. So his whole infancy, toddlerhood was in the city. And then,
Yes.
from 4 on, we've been in the suburbs. And so I got to see both sides of it,
Yeah.
and make jokes about both sides of it. And so
Yes.
that's how the account started. And like I said, I had to pivot, and I did. And I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah, I think that's good too. I like that. I literally have that in some of my like my description of me as a therapist is like I like to, come with people with a sense of humor. And I think if we can help ourselves to kind of laugh at the ridiculosity of some of the realities of parenthood, it can just be, it still sucks, but it's just like, okay, but at least we're lightening the mood a little.
Yeah,
Lightening the
yeah,
mood, yeah.
exactly. That's my whole thing. So with Modern Mom Probs, I like to inspire and I like to give a laugh. And when I really first started the account, it was really based mostly on sort of the concept of like first world problems. Like I said, getting the stroller down the stairs, that
Yeah.
silly nonsense, going to Target, going to Starbucks, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then over the course of the last 5 years, the account pivoted. Again, we're going to use the word pivot, grew
Yep.
in such a way that then I started talking about like actual mom problems,
Yes.
like real things, postpartum depression
Yes.
and infertility and pregnancy loss and all of the mental health issues and all of those things that go into it, which like I said, that wasn't what the account was when it started. And we
Right.
grew into it because as a mother and as a person, you're on a journey, right? And so you're growing into that. And the account was the same way.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And it is, I'm constantly chipping away at, the stigma of mental health. My practice is literally called Amplify Wellness Mental Health because first of all, I'm a very loud person, so it's a little in joke between my girlfriends and I. But also because it's like we're trying to get the word out there, and the more people like you have that are able to talk about it in ways that people respect and can relate to and feel not isolated, not alone, not individual. Oh, it's just me. I'm the only person experiencing these things. It's like, no, my friend, it's not.
Yeah, that's what it is. I just put a post out a few days ago where it was actually my one friend who's on Instagram. Her account is called the Mindful Mess Mom, and she posed
Oh,
the
I'll write that
question
down.
of, oh, she's amazing, you'll love her. Her name's Jolene, and she posed the question of, I wish more people would talk about how motherhood is dot dot dot. And so she posed that question on her account, and then I shared her video about it, but then I had my own questions, like went in Instagram and you could have the questions. And so
Yes.
people filled in their own answers.
Uh-huh.
And it was both sort of heartbreaking and eye-opening to see what people were writing in that.
Mm-hmm.
And time again, it was loneliness
Mm-hmm.
and it was identity eclipsing.
Mm-hmm.
And some, were positive and some were like, oh, it's so fleeting. But we kept seeing the same type of themes over
Mm-hmm.
and over again. And
Yes.
and I think it's important to be able to talk about that kind of stuff now.
Yes, absolutely. And especially being a parent in the pandemic, very difficult we moved here in March of 2020 into Kansas City from Houston. So I mean, we left Houston in our car with our stuff on St. Patrick's Day of 2020. So you can imagine that we have not had a lot of opportunities to find a connection. My son
Mm-hmm.
was 7 or 8 months at the time. I had my daughter while I was here. And so that loneliness piece, that isolation, that even just like, hey, I need to run somewhere. Could someone pop over and watch the kids for 30 minutes is not an option. And so it's been very nice for me to have some social media connections to be able to feel validated and, less lonely, less, abnormal, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel really grounded in the fact that this is not a unique experience to me. It is stressful.
Yeah.
And also I can get through it in certain ways for sure. And I love that you were talking about identity. Are you on Spotify at all? Are you familiar with the like end of year wrap up that people are posting right now?
Everyone's talking about that right now. No, I actually don't listen to Spotify. I listen to Amazon Music because that's just
Love
what I
it.
happen to have on my
Yeah.
Alexa.
Mhm.
But I'm really into hearing what everyone's wrapped up music lists
Yes.
are.
And I really was enjoying that. And it was fun because my husband's I was like, I would go to that concert. Yeah. So that music festival.
What did
My
he have? I'm curious. What did he have?
Oh my gosh. So we My Morning Jacket, like we're very we actually went and saw them at Red Rocks recently. First Aid Kit, like that's kind of our music genre.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, it was I mean, obviously there are like 30 bands, and I was just like, yes, amazing. My top 5 were Four Town from the movie Turning Red, which my son calls Red Panda, was number 1. John Williams, because I put Harry Potter soundtracks on for the kids, like if we're eating sometimes and it feels a little too quiet, we'll put that on, or Mozart. One of the singers from the band Four Town, who I had to Google, I'm like, who's Jordan Fisher or Jonathan Fisher? Anyway. And then the Beatles, because we use Yellow Submarine and Octopus's Garden as part of our bath time playlist that I use on mine, which I love. But I laughed so hard because I was like, this is such a fascinating like study in default parent, primary caregiver status of like, you have, and again, we have very similar music tastes, but like that is such a perfect encapsulation of my husband's personality. And mine is, hi, I'm a mom.
Like, that sums it up so well. I actually had several people tag me yesterday in their stories where they were showing me that. Like one person had the Wiggles, if you're familiar with the Wiggles, that was their number 1 band. And I thought that was hilarious. I should actually repost that today because that was just so funny that she was like, look at this. This is a modern mom problem, right? I think we should talk about that today online. I think that makes sense. But it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But you're right. The music that I listen to is often the music that I listen to with my son because we are together all the time, most of the time. And so that's what we're listening to. But my husband's, listening to, I don't know what he's listening to by himself.
Yes. I will say though, if I may also give him a shout out, because he does listen. My podcast was the number 1 podcast on his list. No big deal. He goes, oh, look, it's you. He's like, you outranked. He listens to Brohio and he listens to some, he went to Ole Miss. So Ole Miss podcast. He's like, you beat out the Ole Miss podcast. I was like, oh, honey, thank you.
I can tell you for a fact, I'm sure I did not beat it out. My husband's a big podcast listener, but he listens to like Lex Friedman and stuff. And I'm clearly not going to beat that one out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Anyway, sorry for the tangent there, but you mentioned identity and that came to me. I was texting with a friend of mine, who his playlist also was amazing as well. His like fake music festival. And I thought, yeah, I was like, here's mine.
That is so good. I'm going to 100% make a post about that today. There's no 2 ways about that in my mind.
Great. Oh, I look forward to kind of seeing how that shakes out. That'll be really great.
Yeah, I'll tag you in it so that you see it.
Hey, thanks. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. Like, I was curious, obviously, besides random conversations with people who DM you, how do you come up with the content for your posts? And I'm always so interested to see the people who just are so clever. And I don't want to be too much of your cheerleader, but like so clever, so witty, so relatable, and just like that. Like, how does that spark your mind? I know you used to be Dora only on Facebook. Like, so that's kind of your profession.
So I do have a background in that. But I look through the lens of a couple things. One is this relatable? Can this touch as many people as it can? And if I'm talking about something, I'm just trying to think of something silly about like what you were saying about the Wrapped, right? Like that's going to resonate with people because there are moms right across America and across the world that are going to go, yep, that's it. So like that's something that's very relatable. Does it fall underneath the umbrella of a modern mom problem? Like, is it, whether it's a silly, funny first world problem, or is it a serious problem? Does that fall underneath that umbrella? So like, those are sort of my 2 like macro concepts of, how I view that through the lens of content. The other thing was when I started the account, my son was 3. When you have a 3-year-old, there's a lot of content that's happening in your house, in as much as a lot of funny stuff, right? A lot of funny stuff, a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of scary stuff, a lot of stuff just in general. And so I just had so much material to work with from like an observational comedy perspective. So I just had a lot of material, so much material, but now he's 10 and there's a lot less material that, other people may relate to, or, we're sort of in those tween years, right? So he's like not a teenager yet, but he's not a baby. And so I've had this conversation with many friends, is like, your material starts to dry up a little bit because you're like, oh gosh, like everything's almost too easy. When things are too easy, then you don't have enough like, material to joke about or to like bring up. But that's sort of one of those things. And so sometimes then you have to like go back into your memory and think of like, well, what was it like having a 4-year-old? Let me write about that, or let me joke about that. So it's one of those things where the material sometimes can get a little tricky the older your kids get, but then you could, like I said, either lean into major concepts of, parenting, and kind of go from there. So
Yeah.
that's how I get my content and my concepts for it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I say it's funny. So I have a 3 and a 1.5-year-old, and I don't know if you've seen the one. I feel like a lot of people have done it. Like me being concerned that my firstborn is not going to be gentle enough with my secondborn, and then the secondborn is Melissa McCarthy throat punching Jason Bateman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, man, I could actually make that one. But I just, even this last weekend, my 1.5-year-old, like full body tackling my son, my 3-year-old. And it's funny because you're right. Like the calamity, the naturally ensuing calamity that occurs when you've got little ones. Absolutely. And I thought about that before too, of like, man, when they're like 8, they're cute in their own ways, but they're not doing like oblivious 3-year-old I don't understand language constructs things, or I'm not fully sure how my body functions and I just fell but I'm okay, but like yeah
all of that kind of stuff. I think, and I've said this many times, it's like, I think the real sweet spot for childhood, at least that I've seen, is between the ages of like 6 and 9.
okay
It's just wonderful. It's like it's great. It's so much easier than when they were toddlers. It's not hard like when they're teenagers. And so like that really is such a beautiful, sweet spot of parenting and motherhood and childhood. So you'll get there. And,
yes
you're just not there yet, but you
yeah
will be. And again, from a comedy standpoint, there's actually like less stuff to joke about because it's kind of like easy peasy,
yeah
or
absolutely
easier, I should say.
yeah well, and I was kind of talking about that in the social media and the documentation piece. I was thinking about a post that you had done a little while ago about kind of the internal struggle of wanting to enjoy every minute and also making peace with the dichotomy of like, I need a break. I need to like, and what have been some of either your experiences or things that people are sharing with you on your page or that you've talked about in your podcast? How do we kind of balance that? And what's the self-talk look like in that situation?
Yeah. And I think that really goes back to what we were saying about being parents of toddlers, because you really feel it so hard when you're a mother of children, let's say under the age of 5, because at that point you're carrying the kids. They're pulling on your pant leg. They're like, mommy, pick me up. Mommy, carry me here. This and then. So it's a lot of physical touch too, which you don't necessarily get when they're a little bit older. And that could be exhausting, physically exhausting, to have to carry them and have to, have, sometimes people say like, oh, my kid's so clingy. Like it's physically exhausting and emotionally exhausting because it's like, mommy, 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 mommy.
Yes.
So you want to be there and you want to be present with them, but your mind's exhausted, your body's exhausted. And I think the important thing is to speak with your kids about that in a way that they'll understand. And what I'm saying by that is that if you're reaching your point, right, you're getting to be like a 7 or 8 or even a 10, explain to them like, mommy needs a minute. Sometimes, when you feel frustrated when your little sister is playing with your toys in a way that you don't want her to play with your toys, mommy's feeling like that right now too. So she's just going to sit on the couch for a few minutes until she feels ready to come play with everyone again. And so if you could put it on their level, because you know what, maybe he gets really mad, right, when his little sister plays with the toys that he wants to play with. And
not in this house, never.
Oh, never once happened. Right. So like, but then he understands that. And so you could sort of put it on his level and say, what, mommy just needs a few minutes to feel ready to play again. And so I think that's one way to do it. But then the other thing too, it's like, I talk about this a lot. It's like the lack of the village. Right. And so how you mentioned it before about like, oh, you want to run to the store and have someone come over for 30 minutes, but like, who's that someone? Like where? Like, where's my village? Like, you don't have the neighbor that's going to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
You don't have the grandparents that are going to drop everything and come, or maybe they don't live anywhere near you, and so you're looking for that village. So either you have to put that village in place with either, hired babysitters or good friends that you've made along the way. It's really hard, or your partner. And a lot of it is, speaking with your partner about sharing the load and having those really sticky conversations. Because I know it's a really sticky topic for a lot of couples, but it's a topic that really needs to be addressed.
Yes.
And you say like, I feel like I'm swimming in this work. I need you to help me do X, Y, and Z.
Absolutely. That communication piece is so tough. I think when we sit quietly, things stew in our brains and we start to build resentments in different ways because we don't understand why somebody did something or didn't do something in a certain way, instead of just asking, hey, I could use help with something. Oh, yes, absolutely. I had planned on doing that after I got done doing da da da. But I've been sitting here stewing about it, and all I could have done is just ask. And it's, it's not a magic wand. There's no such thing as like, oh, I've expressed my needs and desires, and now everyone's gonna magically fall in line and do exactly what I need. There is no magic wand, team, but it is a step in the right direction and opening those lines of communication.
Yeah, 100%. Because, otherwise, then you're sitting there, like you said, you're sitting there stewing, and you're like storifying in your mind, like, well, you're making up a story of like, well, he's doing this because he would rather scroll his phone
Uh-huh.
than help me put away the dishes.
Yes.
It's like, or you could walk over to him and have an open, honest conversation, say like, I know you're looking at something right now. When you're done looking at something, I really could use your help in the kitchen.
Right. Right. Like understanding and maybe he's touched out, maybe he's emotionally spent for a moment, and scrolling on Instagram might be something that just gives him a quick refresh, the same as we need. It's just, yeah, I think that mind reading thing, I am guilty of it. That's why I'm talking about it. I reflect back on the last 3.5 years of parenting with my husband, and I'm like, man, there were times where I allowed myself to get so ramped up. And I think if I would have just said something, like, it's not fair. I don't want to say use the word fair. I hate the word fair, but it's so unfair in that situation to be upset with somebody when they haven't even been given the chance. And we cannot expect people to just know what we need, even though it might seem very obvious, like pick up the milk cups and put them in the fridge, or like, yes, that might seem obvious. And also we're all just trying to figure this parenting thing out.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like, we know the stuff about picking up the, if there's laundry on the floor, we know to pick it up, or the milk cups on the counter, we know to put those in the dishwasher. I think it's a matter of also like opening up our partner's eyes to see those things.
Right.
And once he sees them, then he almost can't unsee them, like we can't unsee them.
That's right.
So we need to help them see.
We can't unsee, and I'll say also too, we can't unthink. Like, not Brene Brown, excuse me, love Brene Brown, but Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach talk about tickering, right? And like, you're just constantly thinking about, okay, next week is Spirit Week, and Monday is this, and Tuesday is Elf Day, and Wednesday is Ugly Christmas, but we don't have ugly Christmas sweaters, so what am I going to do? And like, that's where my brain is almost constantly. And I don't know. I know we've had this conversation. I'm not, like, my husband does not, his brain doesn't really naturally go there. And so I have to be able to, it's not so much like he is asking me to give him a list, but he is helping me to create the list of things that we can check off together. And also it's not necessarily natural for some partners, and that's okay. We just, how do we operate within the system as it is versus trying to be upset because someone's not doing it the way we want them to?
Yep, 100%. Yes. I actually recently, it's funny that you mentioned that. I recently just created a mental load checklist.
Ooh.
It's, and so it's sit down with your partner, and you could literally go through all of the things that you do in your house, whether it's like buy Christmas presents or, hang decorations and all of that kind of stuff. So that you can divvy up the responsibilities in a fairer way.
I love that. I will definitely put that in the show notes, but I think that's so, the mental load, right? It's not necessarily like who takes the trash out, who folds the laundry, who does this and that. It's the thinking piece of it as well that I think kind of gets unnoticed. So that's going to be nice, something nice that we can tangible, sit down and discuss. And yeah, especially if those of us who celebrate holidays, that has, for me, I remember feeling so, to use a Brene Brown word, blown last year. And somebody was like, oh, we should add this gift. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that gift exchange. You can do it without me. I'm out. I'm done. And I'm like, okay, how do I help myself to not get to that space where the stress gonna happen naturally, holidays, duh. How do I get myself to not get to overwhelm? And that's been the delicate balance, as we're only on very early into December.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is such like, that's literally like the $64,000 question to, come up with all of that kind of stuff. But I really think that the answer to that question is just pulling back and doing less, and being good with doing less.
Yes.
So whether it's like not going to, the office Christmas party or something, holiday party, like it's saying no to that particular gift exchange. It's like those sort of things that, where are you absolutely needed that you have to be, and where can you kind of pull back and say like, you know what, we'll get it next year.
Yes. My mentor here in Kansas City talks about which balls are glass. Like if you're juggling all the balls, which ones are glass and which ones are plastic, which ones can fall and they're not going to break, and which ones absolutely have to keep up. And I think I like that metaphor of being able to prioritize, and that's such a uniquely different thing for every person. What's special for me is not as special for someone else, and all around. But yeah. But the other thing I wanted to talk with you about, so I actually have a text thread of moms, and where our text thread is called garbage disposals, and our image is a waste paper basket, like that wire emoji, because we are all default caregivers. We all, when the kids come home, they just want to unload. They're their safe space, which what a beautiful space to be, that we've obviously created that attachment, where they feel safe to be their fullest, truest selves. And so I was just curious kind of what your experience has been. Like, how do we navigate being the garbage disposals for them, and also like we're their constant source of comfort? What has your experience been in that, with navigating that garbage disposal status?
First of all, I have to say that is the funniest name for a text message chain
Yes.
I think I've heard in a long time. So I love that. And it's true. I never really thought of that analogy or that metaphor, for parenting, because there is a certain part of it. And also, like, we're garbage disposals for their leftovers, like if they have like French fries on their plate, like, I'm gonna eat those French fries. Like, oh, there's an extra like dino nugget, I'm gonna eat that dino nugget. Like, clearly. So we're garbage disposals, both like physically and emotionally, for our children. But I'm going to talk more about emotionally. So how do we handle that emotionally? I am also a garbage disposal for my son's needs and wants. And again, like, I am his default parent, and I am the one that he goes to when he's having issues at school or emotionally, or he's having a hard time regulating. It's really hard. That's something that I feel like we should talk more about as parents, and as moms, because it's exhausting. Because, like, not only do we have like our own stuff, but like, especially I think when our children start to even get older, they're dealing with like bigger, more adult problems, and now like you're also helping them deal and giving them the scaffolding for their bigger, more adult problems. So I don't even have such a great answer about how I deal. How do I deal with that? I deal with it by talking it through with him, and sitting with no distractions, no cell phones, no tablets, no iPads, and we just talk through things. And then I'm able to unload on my husband.
Right.
And then I
more garbage disposal.
More garbage disposal. And so then I go to him, and then we sort of unload there. When I first started my Instagram page back in 2016, I had a core group of friends who were also moms on Instagram. Some of the accounts you may be familiar with, and we were our garbage disposals, in as much as like that was like our venting. So we lived in all different parts of the country, actually we even had people in Europe too. We lived all over the world, and we would talk about motherhood, and that's why I love Instagram for the community that it is, because that really gave me my first like true motherhood community with our friends in that particular DM chat. And that was the first time that I ever really had the opportunity to dump and vent with other moms. But for me personally, I think I often go to my husband or my other friends.
Yeah, but absolutely.
It's a lot. My son right now is struggling with a lot of stuff. And it's exhausting. It's really challenging as parents to have to, help them through. And like I said, give them the scaffolding and talk them through it. And then also get the right interventions and help that they need, above and beyond you as parents, with other professionals. And so then to have to know that you're going through that, know that he's going through that, and then still have to like maintain yourself as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this is perhaps, I don't want to put anything on you, but I feel like it perhaps is very specific to you and me and people in our fields. But like, as a mom aficionado on social media, I'm a mental health therapist. I have worked with children. I don't specialize in children now, but I feel like there's almost, for me internally, I'll speak for myself, of like, I need to constantly be doing better too. And I always need to be able to talk through things, and I need to keep my emotions in check at all times when I'm around my children. Now, that's not realistic, obviously, always.
Right. Sure.
because I should know better. There I go shitting on myself. But
Yeah, shoulding. You know, I had just the other day, I did an Instagram live with Libby Ward from Diary of an Honest Mom. And we
mhm.
probably talked for about 15 minutes about the concept of shoulding. And then we were laughing because it sounds like it's swearing, but
Oh yeah.
like you have to stop the shoulds. That's where it starts. It starts with the
Yes.
shoulds.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned that first in grad school. One of my field instructors said, "Don't shit on yourself," and I was just like, "That is genius, and
It's
it is funny, and people
genius.
will remember it."
Yes,
I
it's
do.
genius. That's my big takeaway there. First of all, I love that. I think that is great. Don't should on yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I actually will sometimes, depending on the client and what our relationship and our rapport is, I'll literally say like, "So you said should 4 times in that last sentence. Like, how do we restructure that? Where do we go from there? What are your thoughts on how we can approach that in a different way?" And then I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I did that." Or the other one is people when they apologize too, sometimes don't even recognize it, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a big one too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what has it, I mean, I'm glad you said that you had some good social media contacts. You've mostly generally had some really positive experiences with social media. That's been your
You know, social media is a tricky beast
yes,
because they're two sort of separate parts of it. One, there's like the algorithm, right? So actually the platform, which can be really frustrating sometimes because you're putting
yes,
out really good content and then due to the algorithm, then like no one sees it. And then
yes,
it sort of like gaslights you. We have a joke amongst my
yes,
content creator friends of like that Instagram just like constantly gaslights you. And it's like, here
yes,
we are trying to like do more and be better and this, that. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. And you're like, but
yes.
wait, but I'm trying my hardest. I'm doing my best. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. So there's that, right? So there's the platform itself, but then there's the social connection of it, which is
Yes.
the other part of it, which I love the friends that I've made. I've loved the contacts, the network that I have. I've met so many incredible people all across
Mhm.
the world who have wonderful insights. And through all of those conversations that I've had over the last 5 years, I've been able to make my life better, help make my son and my family's life better. And
Mhm.
so I'm so eternally grateful for that. I'm
Mhm.
grateful for people like you who do the hard work that you do. So that's why I love social media. But then
Mhm.
also there, you know, there's the trolls that makes it a little
Yes.
frustrating sometimes. There's the comparison traps that also make it a little frustrating sometimes.
Yes.
So that's why I say like social media is sort of a tricky beast, but I do think it's beautiful that we have a generation now who are more conscious parents who can
Yes.
go to therapy, who could put their kids in therapy, who can work through the cycles that they grew up with and that they were accustomed to. And so I think
Yes.
that we're in a really nice place right now. So I like to think that social media, the positives outweigh the negatives.
I agree. Yeah. I thank you for validating my gaslighting on the platform of Instagram itself. There are times where I post things and it's got like 10,000 or more views. And I'm like, oh yay, that reel's so good. And then I post something where I'm like, this is the one. This is the one that's so clever and I feel so proud of it. And it's got like 432. And I'm like,
Yes, because it gaslights you. And so what I always tell creators is don't worry about that. Post
yep,
what you enjoy, do
yes.
what you love, post what you love. I got back to posting what I love again. For a while I was sort of like getting away from it and
Uh-huh.
people were like, "Oh, Tara, like you have to be on Reels and it's you doing stuff." And I'm like, "I don't want that for me
Yes.
personally."
Yeah.
Um I can post Reels and I also want to post text boxes, you know, text memes and stuff like that.
Yes.
And so and now I've gotten to the point where it's like, I just want to post what I want to post. It's my
Yep.
account. I want to help people and I want to connect people, but not because someone's telling me that that's the type of content that I want to put out. It's worked for me for 5 years. And so I'm sort of going to say, like, let me continue to do what makes me happy. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's
Mhm.
what, like, my content that makes me happy is also what resonates with other people. So
Absolutely. And I think
don't let it gaslight you.
authenticity, yeah, right. I think authenticity really is the thing that speaks the most to people. In sessions, I very rarely do any self-disclosure because I try to make my sessions all about the client, right? And everyone's like, I don't, if I knew everything, I'd be living on a yacht in Mallorca with Beyonce right now. Okay. Like, my master's degree does not make me omniscient. I just can ask questions in a nice way that helps people get where they are. And so I feel like my social media is kind of helpful because I do have some clients, which obviously HIPAA, and they know like if you follow me, I won't respond to anything, but
Mhm.
and I think it's nice to get just a little glimpse into my personal life, a little bit of understanding about who I am more as a person in a way that They can take it or leave it. They can unfollow me. They can never have followed me to begin with. And then also if they're a little more curious, they can find out a little bit more about me. And I think
Mhm.
in that kind of healthy, boundaried way. And then of course my personal account is on full lockdown. Like, yeah.
Totally private. Yeah, same. Mine too. And that's something that I struggle with also as a content creator. It was like showing enough of yourself, but not too much of yourself, and also respecting your family's boundaries. Like I don't show my husband. That's an agreement that we have every once in a while. If I have to show him for a reason, then I do. He's a medical doctor. He has his own career to
Yeah.
maintain. And so he's doing
Yeah.
his own thing with that. My son, now he's 10, he's also aware of things, right? And so he'll say like, oh, please don't post that or whatever, and I respect him for that. So
Yes.
if anything, I do sometimes then post more when he was like younger, or baby pictures and stuff like that, because
Yeah.
he looks like a different person now.
Yes.
10 years
Yeah.
later, it's like you're a different person. But it's a delicate thing to balance that, the Tara Clark show versus Modern Mom Probs. And I've always said right from the get-go that Modern Mom Probs was always about community, and it's always been about the topics and the concepts, and not the Tara Clark show.
Sure. Oh, I love that. It's a good way of kind of compartmentalizing in a healthy way and recognizing like what is my goal here?
That's what I think. And so, sometimes other people will be like, no, it should be all you. And I'm like, but I don't want it to be all me. It's
Yeah.
me.
Right. Right. And that's not natural for you, right? That's not where you're going. So
I
absolutely.
just don't want that. And like, and if I did want that, then it would be the case, but it's just not. So
Yeah.
like I said, I try not to let the platforms or other people gaslight me and tell me what I should be doing.
Absolutely. Well, I cannot thank you. What a treat it has been to sit and chat with you. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so I guess I'm all over the place. On Instagram, you could find me at Modern Mom Probs. I have a website, modernmomprobs.com. I have a book with the same name. I have a podcast with the same name, Modern Mom Probs. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. That's me in a nutshell.
Great.
Also,
Well,
I have a style box, which I know sounds random, but it's called Modern Mom Style Box. It's a clothing rental subscription service for busy moms where you can rent your wardrobe.
hey,
Yeah,
that's genius.
thanks.
Love that.
I
All right.
appreciate that.
Well, I'll put
Yeah.
all of that in the show notes. I thank you so much for the time. It has been such a delight. Everyone out there, be curious, not judgmental. Bye.